Okay, so you can listen to me while I'm walking around. So my mom and I were talking about what were the purpose of each of these things. So the orange band exercise was teaching someone to drive forward and backward from their hips rather than hinging off of their lower back. So this would teach somebody in their squats and conventional deadlifts, and even sumo deadlift to some degree, what it would be to, if my fingers, the top of my fingers are their shoulders, they'll finish out their lifts by pushing off the floor, and then they'll drive their hip underneath their shoulders and chest, rather than pushing off the floor than trying to low back hinge. So this is teaching them how to use their hips to come towards the bar in a squat and a deadlift, rather than using their lower back to pull the bar back to them. So that's the point of the orange bands. Then the point of the hurricane with the bands is kind of the top half of a deadlift, a conventional deadlift. So my mom does conventional deadlifts in competitions. So this was specific for her. We'd change it for another client if they had a different style deadlift. So this one is as she picked up, like this being raised a little bit reduces her quad drive. So she couldn't just quad drive and coast to the top. By this being a little elevated, she couldn't use that quad drive for the coast. So she had to learn to drive her hips more forward to create the lockout, which coincided with this. So this was an explosive version of getting her to move her hips. This was a weighted version of getting her to move her hips. Then we did the goblet squat marches, and this is unilateral hip health. And what this does is this works on the hip socket more so than the knee or the ankle. By having her hit to the bottom of a squat, that's a harder position on her hip than the walking lunges, which can be made up by the muscles of the thighs. So the quads and hamstrings during a walking lunge can protect your hips. Whereas on a drop-down squat march, the hips have to do more of the work. So this is unilateral hip health, which is something, again, my mom needs for her training, so this might be different for somebody else and their goals. And then we did the walking lunges. As her hips got fatigued here, we would allow her thighs, her hamstrings and quads, to help do this movement while still involving her hips some, so that way we got more time under tension on her hips as she went down and back. So that is the purpose of selecting these 4 exercises, and then doing it in the number of circuits we did in the rest periods we had, made sure that we involved cardiovascular health as well. So that's all the reasoning. Hopefully that made sense.